I knew exactly what I was. In this world, a world dictated by biology, secondary genders, and pheromones, I was a background character. A generic omega with a scent that probably registered as mild detergent compared to the intoxicating floral bouquets of the protagonists. I was a footnote in a romance novel I'd read in a previous life. I didn't even have a name in the original text, just a designation, the contract spouse. So, the fact that I was currently married to Mason Sterling, the novel's primary antagonist and a prime alpha of terrifying power, was a constant source of bewilderment. "Joshua," my friend Leo snapped, waving a hand in front of my face. "Are you even listening to me?" I said, "The tabloids are eating you alive." I blinked, taking a sip of my iced latte. We were sitting in a bistro downtown. "I'm listening. I just don't see the point in getting worked up." "Not see the point," Leo hissed, leaning over the table. "Mason has been photographed with 3 different omegas in the last week. People are saying he's finally going to dump you. They're saying you're a placeholder. A useless male wife who can't even hold his alpha's attention." I shrugged, fiddling with the straw wrapper. "They aren't wrong, Leo. I am a placeholder. That's literally what the contract says." 1 year ago, Mason Sterling had dropped a document on a table in front of me. He looked like a god of war in a bespoke suit, smelling of crushed pine needles and ozone, a scent so heavy it made my knees weak. "I need a spouse," he had said, his voice a deep baritone that vibrated in my chest. "Someone to keep the media off my back and satisfy the board's family values requirement. You're quiet. You're clean. You'll do." I had read the contract. Mandatory cohabitation. Marital duties only when necessary for public appearances. Absolute fidelity on my part. I expect my partner to be discreet. Mason had told me then, looking away as if he couldn't bear to make eye contact. "I don't like complications." I had nodded, mesmerized by the number of zeros on the monthly allowance. "Okay. It's just business," I told Leo now. "If he wants to replace me, he buys me out. I get a severance package that could fund a small island nation. Why should I fight it?" Leo looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. "Because you've been living with him for a year. Because he's Mason freaking Sterling. You're telling me you don't feel anything? No omega instincts kicking in? No desire to build a nest and drag him into it?" I paused. That was the lie I told everyone, including myself. "He's never home, Leo," I said quietly. His classic line to his friends is, "My wife hates it when I'm late," or "My wife is the jealous type." He uses me as an excuse to leave boring parties. That's my function. I'm a human do not disturb sign. "If he uses you as an excuse to come home," Leo countered, "then maybe he actually wants to be home. Have you thought about that?" "He hasn't been home in 2 days," I admitted, my voice dropping. Leo slammed his hand on the table. "That's it. You are going to text him. Right now. And say what? Please come home, I'm lonely?" "Yes. Use that pathetic, wet-eyed look you're so good at. Weaponize your submissiveness, Joshua. If you're going to be a useless wife, be the best damn useless wife he's ever seen. Guilt trip him." I hesitated. The truth was, the apartment was too big without him. My pillow didn't smell like him anymore. My omega instincts were screaming at me that my alpha was gone, and it was making my chest ache with a hollow, bruised feeling. "Fine," I whispered. I pulled out my phone. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over his contact. I decided to be direct. "Where are you?" The reply was instantaneous. It was a photo. A dimly lit VIP lounge in a high-end club. Bottles of expensive champagne. And just at the edge of the frame, the cuff of a suit jacket I recognized. He was surrounded by people. "Busy," the text read. "Entertaining." I felt a spike of irritation. He was out drinking while I was hugging a giant stuffed bear in a cold bed. The sour taste of jealousy, which I had no right to feel, coated my tongue. "He's at a club," I told Leo. "Tell him to come back," Leo commanded. I swallowed hard. I typed, "Can you come home?" 3 dots appeared. Then stopped. Then appeared again. If I say no? The challenge in those words was palpable. He was testing me. "He's being difficult," I groaned. "Beg," Leo said simply. "Trust me. Alphas like him. They want to be needed." I took a deep breath. I felt ridiculous. I felt like I was playing a role in a bad soap opera. But I also felt desperate. "Please," I typed. Nothing. I bit my lip. I added one more word, a word I rarely used outside of public appearances. "Husband." The silence stretched for 5 minutes. I was about to throw the phone into my latte when it buzzed. On my way, Mason, the engine of the Maybach, roared as I tore down the highway, pushing 80 in a 50 zone. My hands gripped the leather steering wheel so hard the knuckles were white. Husband. One word. That was all it took to shatter my resolve. I had been staying away on purpose. The rumors were garbage, business strategies to throw off competitors, but I let them circulate. I wanted to see if Joshua would care. I wanted to see if the quiet, skittish creature I kept in my house would show a single spark of possessiveness. For a year, he had been perfect. Too perfect. He smiled when I told him to smile. He hid when I told him to hide. He was the perfect contract spouse, and it was driving me insane. I didn't want a contract. I wanted him. I pulled into the driveway, killing the engine. The house was dark, save for the lamp in the master bedroom. I walked inside, loosening my tie. The air in the house smelled faintly of him, vanilla and soft linen. It instantly settled the agitation in my blood. My alpha instincts, which had been prowling the cage of my ribs for days, finally sat down. I pushed open the bedroom door. Joshua was there, buried in the duvet. He was curled up in a ball, his face pressed into the pillow I usually slept on. He looked up as I entered, his eyes wide and glassy, like a deer caught in headlights. He scrambled to sit up, clutching a stuffed bear I had bought him months ago. "You're back," he whispered. I tossed my jacket onto the chair and leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. I let my pheromones leak out, just a little, heavy, dominant pine, filling the room. "You called," I said, my voice rougher than I intended. "I came. Now tell me, Joshua, why did you want me back?" He looked down, his fingers digging into the fur of the bear. His scent spiked with anxiety, souring the vanilla sweetness. He faltered. I walked over to the bed. I didn't sit. I stood over him, casting a shadow. Was it because of the news? The rumors about the Omega from the Star Sector? "No," he said quickly. Too quickly. "Then why?" I pressed. "You usually love it when I'm gone. You get the whole bed. You don't have to pretend." He flinched. "That hurt." "Good. I wanted a reaction." "I couldn't sleep," he murmured. "That's it." I let out a dark chuckle, leaning down to brace my hands on the mattress on either side of his hips. I brought my face close to his, inhaling the scent of his neck. "You dragged me out of a negotiation worth millions because you needed a sleep aid." He turned his face away, his cheek flushing pink. "It's cold," he stammered. "The bed is cold." It was a lie, or at least a partial truth. But looking at him, with his messy hair and his trembling lip, I found I didn't care. "Move over," I growled. He scrambled to the other side of the king-sized bed. I stripped off my shirt and pants, leaving on my boxers, and slid under the covers. Immediately, a warm, soft weight pressed against my back. He hesitated, then wrapped his arms around my waist, burying his face between my shoulder blades. He let out a long, shaky exhale, and I felt his entire body relax. "You're warm," he mumbled against my skin. I stiffened, my heart hammering a rhythm I hoped he couldn't feel. "Go to sleep, Joshua." "Mason." "What?" "I missed you." The words were barely audible, but in the silent room, they sounded like a gunshot. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to turn around and crush him into the mattress, to bite the gland on his neck and claim him so thoroughly he'd never look at another human being again. "You're a troublemaker," I rasped. "I know. Sleep." Joshua. The next morning, Mason was gone before I woke up. The space beside me was cold again, but the scent of pine lingered, strong and possessive. I felt a strange cocktail of relief and disappointment. My phone buzzed. A message from Mason. "Be ready by 11. We're visiting grandmother." My stomach dropped. Mason's grandmother was the matriarch of the Sterling family. She was dying. The whole reason for our marriage, ostensibly, was to let her see Mason settled and happy before she passed. I dressed carefully, a soft sweater that covered my neck, no claiming mark to show off, unfortunately, and comfortable slacks. When the car arrived, the driver held the door open. Mason was already in the back seat, typing furiously on a tablet. He glanced up, his eyes sweeping over me. "You look tired," he commented. "I slept fine," I lied. "Thanks to you." His fingers paused on the screen. The corner of his mouth twitched. "Good." The drive was silent, filled with a tension that felt thick enough to chew. When we arrived at the estate, the atmosphere shifted. There was a sleek silver sports car in the driveway. Mason frowned. I didn't know we had guests. We walked in. The living room was bathed in sunlight. Grandmother was sitting in her wheelchair, looking frail but happy. And sitting next to her, peeling an apple with elegant precision, was a man I recognized instantly. Julian. The protagonist. The Canon Omega. The one Mason was supposed to end up with. He was beautiful, of course. Delicate features, porcelain skin, and a scent like fresh freesia that seemed to naturally harmonize with Mason's pine. Mason. Joshua. Grandmother beamed. Look who surprised me. Julian came back from Europe. Julian stood up, wiping his hands on a napkin. He smiled, and it was blinding. Mason. It's been years. I felt Mason stiffen beside me. Julian. I didn't know you were back. Just for a visit, Julian said, his eyes crinkling. He looked at me. And this must be Joshua. I've heard so much. I felt like an intruder in my own life. I felt the narrative gravity of the world shifting, pulling Mason and Julian together. Nice to meet you, I managed to say, my voice sounding thin. The next hour was torture. Julian and Mason fell into an easy rhythm of conversation about people I didn't know and places I hadn't been. Do you remember, Grandmother chuckled, when you two were boys? Mason, you climbed that oak tree to get Julian's kite and fell. Broke your arm. You didn't cry once, but Julian cried for 3 hours. Julian laughed, a musical sound. I felt so guilty. He was always protecting me. Always, Mason said softly. I sat there, sipping tea that tasted like ash. I watched them. They looked right together. History, chemistry, class status, they matched. I was just the contract. The placeholder. I stood up abruptly. I need to use the restroom. I fled. I didn't go to the bathroom. I went to the garden and stood by the fountain, breathing in the cold air, trying to stop my eyes from burning. Joshua, I turned. It wasn't Mason. It was Julian. He walked over, his expression unreadable. You have a beautiful bond with him, he said. We have a contract. I blurted out before I could stop myself. Julian tilted his head. Contracts can be broken, or they can become real. But looking at you, you don't think you belong here, do you? I know I don't, I whispered. You're the one I stopped. I couldn't say you're the one he's supposed to be with according to the plot. I'm the one he grew up with, Julian finished. But people change, Joshua. I didn't believe him. When we left an hour later, the silence in the car was different. It wasn't tense, it was dead. Mason stared out the window. I stared at my hands. You were quiet, Mason said finally, not looking at me. I didn't have much to add, I said. You and Julian, you have a lot of history. We do. He's nice, I said, the words tasting like bile. He suits you. Mason turned his head slowly. His eyes were dark, dangerous. What did you say? I said he suits you. If you want to end the contract early, Mason, I understand. I won't make it difficult. I know my place. The air in the car suddenly dropped 10 degrees. The scent of pine flared, turning sharp, smelling of turpentine and rage. Stop the car, Mason barked. The driver slammed on the brakes. We were in the middle of a quiet suburban street. Get out, Mason said to the driver. The man scrambled out instantly, closing the door. Mason unbuckled his seatbelt and turned on me, grabbing my shoulders. He pinned me against the leather seat, his face inches from mine. Is that what you think? He hissed. You think I want to swap you out like a used car? I saw how you looked at him. I cried, the tears finally spilling over. I heard the stories. You broke your arm for him. You're destined for each other. I'm just the guy you paid to warm your bed. Destiny. Mason laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. I don't give a damn about destiny. I care about you. He shook me, just a little. Do you feel nothing, Joshua? All this time, living in my house, sleeping in my arms. Is it really just a paycheck to you? It's safer if it is. I yelled back. Because if it's real, then I have something to lose. And I always lose. He stared at me, his chest heaving. The anger drained out of his face, replaced by something cold and desolate. He let go of my shoulders and sat back. Fine, he said quietly. If that's how you see it. If you're so determined to be nothing more than an employee, then you're right. This isn't working. My heart stopped. What? I'm ending the contract, Mason said, looking straight ahead. I'll have the lawyers draft the settlement. You'll get your money. You can move out tomorrow. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I had offered it, but hearing him say it, hearing him confirm that he was done with me, shattered me. Okay, I whispered, my voice breaking. Okay. Joshua, I moved into a hotel the next day. I blocked Mason's number. I unfollowed him on social media. I tried to erase him from my life. It was impossible. Everywhere I looked, I saw him. In the news, in the magazines, in the hotel lobby. I spent 3 days in bed, ordering room service and staring at the ceiling. My Omega instincts were in revolt. I felt sick, cold, and untethered. Nesting was impossible because nothing smelled like him. On the 4th day, I turned my phone back on. Notifications flooded in. Hundreds of them. I ignored them all and opened the news app, bracing myself for the headline. Mason Sterling and Julian reunite. Instead, I saw, Mason Sterling issues statement. My marriage is private and my heart is taken. Stop the speculation. I blinked. My heart gave a traitorous little flutter. Then, I opened Instagram. The algorithm, cruel as ever, showed me Julian's profile. There was a new photo, posted yesterday. Julian, laughing, being hugged from behind by a tall, rugged alpha with tattoos up his neck. The caption read, finally introduced the boyfriend to the family. He was nervous, but Grandma loved him. I stared at the screen. Boyfriend. The canon was broken. Julian wasn't with Mason. But the plot. The book. I felt a sudden, dizzying wave of confusion. If Julian wasn't the endgame, then why did Mason kick me out? Because you told him you didn't care, a voice in my head whispered. Because you pushed him away. I was an idiot. A complete, utter idiot. I needed air. I needed a drink. I called Leo. Meet me at the Sapphire Lounge. Now, 2 hours later, I was 3 martinis deep and crying into a bowl of peanuts. He's a bastard, I slurred. A handsome, rich, pine-scented bastard. Leo sighed, swirling his drink. You're the one who told him to terminate the contract, Josh. I was being noble. I slammed my glass down. I was stepping aside for true love. How was I supposed to know true love had a neck tattoo and wasn't Mason? You could have asked, Leo pointed out. So what are you going to do? I'm going to drink, I declared. And then I'm going to, I don't know, die alone with my cats. I don't even have cats. I grabbed my phone. My thumb hovered over the blocked contacts list. Don't do it, Leo warned. I'm doing it. I unblocked Mason. I hit call. It rang once. Joshua. Mason's voice was tight, urgent. You're a jerk, I shouted into the phone. The bar went quiet around me. I didn't care. Where are you? Mason demanded. I'm at a bar. Getting drunk. Because my husband fired me. I didn't fire you, you quit. Mason roared back. Stay there. Don't move. I'm coming. Bring the car with the heated seats. I yelled. My butt is cold. I hung up. Leo looked at me with wide eyes. You just screamed at Mason Sterling. He deserves it, I huffed. Then I put my head on the table and passed out. Mason, when I walked into the Sapphire Lounge, the music seemed to stop. I scanned the room, my pheromones rolling off me in waves of agitation. I found him in a booth in the back. Leo waved at me nervously. Joshua was asleep, his cheeks squashed against the table, drooling slightly. God, I loved him. I nodded at Leo. I've got him. I scooped Joshua up into my arms. He weighed nothing. He stirred, blinking bleary eyes up at me. He smelled of alcohol and distress, burnt sugar and ozone. Mason, he slurred. I'm here. He scowled and poked me in the chest. You kicked me out. We'll talk about it when you're sober, I said, carrying him out to the car. I drove him back to the main house, our house. I carried him upstairs, stripped off his outer clothes, and tucked him into bed. He immediately curled into the pillows, inhaling deeply, a contented purr rumbling in his chest. Pine, he mumbled. Mine. I sat on the edge of the bed, brushing the hair off his forehead. Yes. Yours. Always yours. Joshua the hangover was a physical entity trying to drill a hole through my skull. I groaned, shielding my eyes from the sunlight streaming through the window. Wait. This wasn't the hotel. I sat up, clutching the duvet. This was Mason's room. The door opened. Mason walked in, carrying a tray with water and aspirin. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes. Drink, he said, setting the tray down. I took the pills and downed the water. Did I? Call you? You call me a jerk. You demanded heated seats. You told me your butt was cold. Mason crossed his arms, leaning against the dresser. It was the most honest conversation we've ever had. I groaned, burying my face in my hands. I'm sorry. Don't be. The doorbell rang downstairs. Mason frowned. Stay here. He left. I waited a moment, then curiosity got the better of me. I crept out to the landing and looked down into the foyer. Julian was there. He was holding a basket of peaches. Mason, Julian said cheerfully. Sorry to drop by. Mom sent these over from the orchard. She insisted. Thanks, Mason said, taking the basket. He sounded polite, distant. Is Joshua here? Julian asked. I saw his shoes. He's resting, Mason said sharply. Julian sighed. Look, Mason. About the other day. I think he misunderstood. He thinks. Well, he thinks we're a thing. I know what he thinks, Mason said. You need to tell him, Julian said softly. Tell him about the mulberry tree. Tell him who he is. I froze. The mulberry tree? A sharp pain spiked in my temples. A flash of memory, bright, blinding sunlight. Sticky purple juice on my fingers. A boy with intense dark eyes. I swayed on the branch, laughing. Catch me, Mason. The boy held out his arms. I've got you. I won't let you fall. I jumped. We tumbled into the grass, laughing, stained with berry juice. One day, I had said, lying on my back looking at the sky, I'm going to marry you. You promise? The boy asked. I promise. Even if I forget, you have to remind me. The memory hit me with the force of a freight train. The accident. I had been in a car accident when I was 18. Mild amnesia. I had forgotten chunks of my childhood. I had filled in the blanks with the plot of a book I had read, convincing myself I was a transmigrator because it was easier than accepting I had lost myself. But Mason hadn't forgotten. I walked down the stairs. My legs felt shaky. Joshua, Julian said, spotting me. You look terrible, honey. I remember. I whispered, looking at Mason. Mason dropped the basket of peaches. They rolled across the marble floor. What? Mason asked, his voice barely a whisper. The mulberry tree, I said, walking toward him. The juice on our hands. The promise. Mason stared at me, his eyes filling with a raw, terrifying hope. You remember? I thought I was a character in a book, I said, laughing through tears. I thought you were the villain. I thought I was nobody. You were never nobody, Mason said, closing the distance between us in 2 strides. He grabbed my face in his hands. You were my best friend. You were my first love. When you woke up after the accident and didn't know me, it killed me, Joshua. So I made the contract. It was the only way to keep you close without scaring you away. You should have told me, I sobbed. Would you have believed me? He asked. You were so convinced of your story. I'm an idiot, I said. Yes, he agreed, resting his forehead against mine. But you're my idiot. And the contract? I asked. Burn it, he said. I don't want a contract. I want a bond. I want a mark on your neck that tells the whole world you're mine. My Omega instincts flared, hot and demanding. Then do it, I challenged him. Claim me. Mason didn't hesitate. He swept me up into his arms, kissing me with a hunger that had been suppressed for years. Julian, Mason growled, breaking the kiss for a second. Get out. Julian laughed, already opening the door. Enjoy the peaches. Use protection. The door slammed shut. Mason carried me back up the stairs. The bedroom door kicked shut behind us. No more running, Mason murmured against my lips, his hand sliding under my shirt. No more stories. Just us, I agreed, pulling him down. Just us. Epilogue Joshua 3 months later. I sat on the kitchen counter, wearing one of Mason's oversized shirts. He was standing between my knees, meticulously buttoning it up for me. Stop fidgeting, he scolded gently. You're being overprotective, I complained. It's just a dinner party. You're not wearing a scent patch, he noted, his fingers grazing the fresh, jagged bite mark on the junction of my neck and shoulder. It was fully healed, a permanent claim. Why should I hide it? I grinned. Let them see. Let them know the useless male wife bagged the big shot. Mason chuckled, leaning in to kiss the mark. You didn't bag me. I was waiting in the trap for 20 years. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, white plastic stick. I held it up. Mason froze. He stared at the object. 2 pink lines. Is that? His voice cracked. A plot twist, I whispered. Mason looked at me, then at the test, then back at me. The look on his face, pure, unadulterated joy, was better than any ending I could have written. He buried his face in my stomach, wrapping his arms around my waist, holding on tight. I love you, he muffled against the fabric. I ran my fingers through his hair. I know. I love you too. I wasn't a background character anymore. I was the protagonist of the only story that mattered. And this time, I wasn't going to forget a single word.